Yeah, that's right.
Social distance.
I know.
Just go down. I'll have a tape measure. All right, let's go.
We'll get the camera.
Okay, tell me then. Whenever you're ready.
Yes.
Minister, you give it to see media update, right? Still. You don't have to.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay.
Good day and a warm welcome to members of the media and our viewing public today, Thursday, 29th of October 2020. I am Kavita Supram, Corporate Communications Officer at the Ministry of Finance. With us today are the Honorable Com Imbert, Minister of Finance, Senator the Honorable Alison West, Minister of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. This conference will provide the nation with an update on a range of ministerial matters relating to the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Public Administration and the Digital Transformation. When the ministers have finished their statement, the floor will be open to members of the media for questions. Before we proceed with the questions, we will ask all media representatives to use the raise hand tool and to identify yourself by stating your name and the media house that you represent. Ladies and gentlemen, I now turn you over to the honorable ministers.
Good afternoon or good morning. Sorry for being late. Today we have myself and Minister West, the Minister of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. The purpose of this press conference is to deal with some issues that keep coming up in the press, in the media, from opposition platforms, and so on, with respect to two matters. One is the process by which the Ministry of Finance goes through raising loan financing for budgetary purposes on an annual basis, and in particular allegations about a company called NCB Global Finance Limited. That's my responsibility. That's what I will be dealing with this morning. And then Minister West will deal with rental of appointments. So let me start with my responsibility. I've noticed I've been given transcripts and printed accounts of statements made in the public domain, on Facebook, in the newspapers, statements made by the leader of the opposition. And in these statements, the leader of the opposition has alleged or insinuated that the Young family, all three members of that family, the father, Richard Young, the brother, Angus Young, and Minister Stuart Young, are somehow profiting in the millions of dollars from transactions between NCB Global Finance Limited and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I wouldn't even repeat all the allegations, they're so scandalous and ridiculous. But the theme of the allegations is that Minister Young, Angus Young, and Richard Young are somehow profiting in the millions of dollars from these loan transactions. And there's even an insinuation that Minister Young was somehow acting as a broker for these transactions. And this is why he recused himself at cabinet meetings when we were deliberating on awards of mandates for loan financing for various purposes, for loans to state enterprises, for projects, for loans for budget support, etc. I can tell you categorically that Minister Young is so careful that whether NCB Global Finance is successful in winning a tender to provide loan financing to the government or a state enterprise, whether or not they are successful, he recuses himself. And it's become a bit of a joke with us that we've told him that he has to make a stamp and just stamp the paper and say, I recuse. Because he has gone to the extreme in any time the name NCB Global Finance Limited is mentioned in a government document, he recuses. So he takes no part in the discussion, he takes no part in the decision. And that is why you would find that there's these large number of recusals. In most of the recusals, NCB Global Finance was unsuccessful. So let's say there were 100 financing arrangements over the last 5 years, and NCB was successful in 5 and was unsuccessful in 95. Minister Young has recused himself 100 times. I'm just throwing out numbers, 95 of which were associated with financing arrangements where NCB Global Finance was unsuccessful. They didn't win. But he's just very, very careful where that is concerned because he does not want it said that he influenced the decision-making process at Cabinet in any way. Let me now deal with the facts. The opposition leader alleged that millions and millions of dollars in commissions, I think that's what I'm seeing here, were paid to somebody associated with the Youngs, with the three members of the Young family, and that NCB has got the vast majority of financing arrangements that they tendered for. And the theory that the leader of the opposition has used to arrive at that ridiculous and false conclusion is that Minister Young recuses himself every time. So what the opposition leader has done is said because he recused himself every time, it means NCB won the bid every time. I've just explained that that is nonsense. They did not. And I actually have the figures here in front of me. And as of the 29th of October 2020, looking at the period 2015 to 2020, the NCB has been successful in 3.7% of cases. 3.7%. So let's say the government borrowed $70 billion, just throwing out a number, NCB would have been successful in just over $2 billion of that. So let me repeat that in 96.3% of occasions that the government has borrowed money, whether from Answer Merchant Bank, Citibank, First Citizens Bank, Royal Bank, Republic Bank, Scotia Bank, etc., because we borrow from everybody. What happens is that there's a request for proposals, and it's evaluated based on a number of parameters, including interest rate, the tenor of the loan, the length of time, the fees being charged by the financial institution, and all other charges. And after all of this evaluation is done, looking at everything, then the debt management unit of the Ministry of Finance, because it's all done at arm's length, it's the public servants who invite the proposals for financing, and then it's the public servants who analyze the submissions and then use a matrix and come up with a point scale and determine which one, whether it is Royal Bank, Republic Bank, Scotia Bank, etc., are successful and have the best offer in terms of best value for money and the least cost to the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago by extension. So returning to my figures, NCB Global Finance Limited has been successful in just over 3% of occasions. 96.3% of the time, they were unsuccessful. But Minister Young, as I said, extremely cautious. He recused himself every time, whether NCB was successful or unsuccessful. Let me also say that NCB Global Finance, because there's some other allegation here, that it's a little company, and how come all of a sudden it's doing financing for the government? And I repeat, they're only doing 3% of the total. NCB is a subsidiary of a much larger company, a company out of Jamaica that is called NCB Capital Markets, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of NCB Financial Group of Jamaica. And that company, that group of companies, is majority owned by a well-known Jamaican businessman by the name of Michael Lee Chin. So that the Young family, they don't own the company. So that when NCB Global Finance Limited is successful in getting a mandate from the government to provide loan financing, it is Michael Lee Chin who benefits because he owns the company. Angus Young is just an employee. All the other allegations, as far as I'm concerned, are just completely baseless and false, and it's just a rehash. This has been going on for so long, it's become ridiculous now. This ad, we put on an ad in the newspapers a couple of months ago where we stated all of this. It's the process. Step 1, Cabinet issues a directive to the Ministry of Finance to secure the necessary funding. Step 2, the Ministry of Finance Debt Management Unit looks at our debt profile, decides what sort of tenor, what period we want, whether we want to borrow over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 5 years, whatever it is. We look at our debt profile. Then step 3, the Debt Management Unit issues a request for proposals to all the institutions, ANSA, CIBC, Citicorp, First Citizens, JMMB, Republic Bank, NCB Global, RBC, etc. We do auctions through Central Bank as well, Scotiabank, Unitrust, etc. Then the step 4, the proposals are then received and analyzed based on effective interest rate, fee structure, total cost, internal rate of return, net present value. Then when that is all done, and the Debt Management Unit of the Ministry has done its analysis, it has made a conclusion, a notice submitted to Cabinet, Cabinet deliberates, and then the award of the mandate is given, and the institution raises the finance and provides it to the state enterprise or to the government. So nowhere in all of that is Richard Young or Stuart Young involved. It's just ridiculous, and I think Mr. Young has a very good case for defamation and slander. That's my contribution to this press conference. Over to Minister West.
Thank you, Minister Imbert. I am here to treat with, as Minister Imbert indicated, the issues being raised currently in the press on certain rentals that the government is engaged in. There are 3 issues that have come out of articles that have appeared in the press recently. One in the Trinidad Express of the 21st of the 10th, Anna Ramdas, who incorrectly referred to me on each occasion as Alison Lewis, and I would ask her not to do that going forward. Alison Lewis is a retired public servant who served the Ministry of Finance diligently for years. I would ask you to let her retire in peace and enjoy her retirement. So Anna Ramdas dealt with the issue of the outfitting cost at 3 Alexandra, although incorrectly had a picture of 1 Alexander in the newspaper. In the Newsday, the Congress of the People raised a concern about the projected 20 million that they say I indicated we would be spending in outfitting the building. And the newspapers covered, as they tend to do, Mrs. Prasad Bissessa's Monday Night Forum, in which she accused the AG of recusing himself on several occasions, saying at one point, what are these 70 rentals or leases that you had to recuse yourself of? I call on the AG to explain how much rent are we paying. So let me first deal with the issue of the recusals. As Mr. Young has done, and as Minister of Finance would have explained, the AG also, as the rest of the cabinet does, recuses himself anytime there's an issue that may be a conflict of interest. It is the standard practice of this cabinet, and we all have been required to do that on occasion. So, in respect of these so-called 17 properties that the AG is obviously leasing to the state because of the 17 recusals that have to do with property, let me give you a breakdown. 7 of the recusals had to do with 2 properties. 4 of them had to do with 3 Alexandra Street, and 3 of them had to do with 1 Alexandra Street. 3 Alexandra, the Attorney General is a shareholder in that company. 1 Alexandra, the Attorney General's wife, is a director but not a shareholder. All of the other recusals did have to do with the state rental of property, but they had to do with property owned by relatives and in-laws of Mr. Alwari, not Mr. Alwari himself. Some of those properties the state did rent, and some of the properties were not rented. So let me state categorically that Mr. Alwari, the Attorney General, is a shareholder in a company that rents 1 building to the state, and that building is 3 Alexander. So let me give you some details on the property rental itself. This building is a building that was under construction around the beginning of the term, and even prior to the prior term of this current administration. As early as March of 2015, before this government came into power, the Property and Real Estate Division, which falls currently under the Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation, received a request from a ministry expressing interest in that building. So while the UNC was in power, the government started to show an interest in that building, which I believe construction was coming to an end to at that time. The building is 40,000 square feet. It has 89 car parks. It was IT ready. It has a generator. It has 2 elevators. The commissioner of valuation, in conducting her valuation or his valuation at the time on this property, categorized the building as a modern/executive building. So, and that would determine the valuation. The valuation received from the commissioner of valuation when we were considering in 2016, 2017 renting that building was $640,000. Because the cabinet and the Property and Real Estate Division, which falls under me, is meticulous in determining that we get value for money, we sought a second valuation from an independent valuator, and that valuator also valued the property at an amount in excess of the rent that we currently pay. I will also tell you that in June 12, 2015, while the UNC was still in power, the Property and Real Estate Division proposed to rent that building for $720,000. The rent that this cabinet approved in 2017 to pay to the landlord is $600,000 per month. So the UNC was prepared to lease that building for $120,000 more than this cabinet is paying for it now, but yet it continues to be a problem. So are we getting value for money? The rent that we are paying is equivalent to $14.31 per square foot, and this is only in respect of the areas which are usable, because the valuation division has switched to the American approach to valuation, where they do not value the common areas. So bathrooms are excluded, stairways are excluded, the lobby area and so are excluded, so that the net space applied to the rent gives you a square footage cost of $14.31 per square footage. In determining whether we were getting value for money, we compared this rental with other rentals, both rentals engaged in by the state and renters engaged in by private sector persons. So the CSO occupies a building at 47 Frederick Street, which is rented at $19.92 per square foot. The Children's Court occupies a building which is rented at $16.85 per square foot. The Ministry of Sport occupies a building which is rented at $16.06 per square foot. The Ministry of Public Utilities occupies a building which is rented at $13.52 a square foot. All of that comparing very favorably with the per square footage rental paid in respect of 3 Alexander. When we look to what the private sector is renting buildings of equal quality for, we look around the Queen's Park Savannah, and we see 70 to 20 Queen's Park Savannah rented for $22 per square foot, and the Sagicor building at $21.31 per square foot. So when the cabinet considered all of these facts and looked at the appropriateness of the building for the use to which we had intended to put it, we concluded that it was very reasonable. The AG is not benefiting over and above what he should based on the fact that he's a member of cabinet. So that has to do with the rental of the building. The other accusation, it has to do with how much we are paying for outfitting the building. What I had indicated during the Standing Finance Committee discussion in Parliament last week was that the estimate arrived at by the CPO for outfitting the building was $20 million. So far, the CPO has spent a total of $8 million because we all know the Ministry of Finance has been challenged with the level of demands for all the ministries and has been pushing back. So the CPO has only spent so far $8 million and it's outfitting the building incrementally as it goes. Notwithstanding that the building is being fully occupied and used, what the CPO has been forced to do in the interim is to use furniture brought from its previous buildings. And also what it's doing to bring down the cost, the proposed cost of outfitting, is engaging the Ministry of Works to do a lot of the work that would normally be outsourced. And it is also using or proposing to use open source software for its PBX system. Now, people are asking why 20 million sounds like a lot of money, but if you look at any building that is rented by anybody, when you move into an Opta building to use as an office, you acquire a building that is an open floor space, just an empty shell. You have to put up blinds, you have to put up workstations, you have to put up partitions, you have to put up offices, IT, signage, carpeting perhaps in certain places, outfit the kitchen, buy desk and chairs, conference rooms. All of these things have to be built in. So it's not that we are renting a defective building or overpaying for a building. Outfitting a building is a normal process and it is an expensive process. When we look at other outfitting costs, as the Minister of Finance would have indicated in the Set Finance Committee, we are outfitting currently the Waterfront Tower D for the judiciary, and that is costing at least twice what the proposed cost of outfitting the CPO's building is. So the CPO's cost in the normal course of things is reasonable. Minister Young would also have indicated in said Finance Committee that the UNC would have outfitted the building at 1 Alexandra Street, which is right next door to the building that the CPO occupies, for $127 million. $51 million of that relates to one of the outfitting contracts, which was under challenge before the courts, and that matter has been resolved. So seeking to challenge a building that costs less than 1/5 of what the UNC spent to outfit the building that is right next door is scandalous. They know better, and they are trying to create issues where none exist. So essentially, that is it. I would also say that notwithstanding the fact that the UNC spent $127 million on 1 Alexandra Street, they did not occupy the building for 5 years. There's another building in Barataria on which they paid rent of $1 million a month that they did not, that they supposedly procured for the CPO that was never occupied for 3 years at $1 million a month. So attacking this government, which is being very responsible in its rental policy, is ridiculous and a non-starter. And I hope that clears up a lot of issues that the press has been pursuing based on comments made by the UNC. Thank you.
We now open the floor for questions. However, before we proceed with questions from the media, I want to kindly ask all media representatives to please use the raise hand tool, and also to please identify yourself by stating your name and the media house that you represent before you ask your question. So if there are any questions at this time, I will now invite the media to do so. At the moment, we have no questions. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Okay. I just want to add that I've been looking at the allegations that the leader of the opposition made on Facebook on the 2nd of August. And there are 3 different things being said here. One of them is that the Young family, which is father and 2 sons, have made millions of dollars from associations with government. That's allegation 1. Allegation 2 is that NCB won the vast majority of contracts to finance government business. And allegation 3, and that Minister Young somehow profited from that. And allegation 3 is that their father also was a broker or commission agent and got millions of dollars. I want to state categorically that I have never had any interaction whatsoever with Minister Young or the father, Richard Young, with respect to financing, loan financing. They have had no involvement whatsoever, neither the father nor the son. And there's no truth to any of this whatsoever.
And if I may add that when the CPO moved into the building at 3 Alexandra, it was in response to a request from them to consolidate their offices because they were operating at the time out of 4 different offices in Port of Spain, which created costs in terms of moving paper and people around and delays and inefficiencies in operation. The CPO assures me that in the new space, they can operate much more efficiently as a whole unit, and because of that, they are more able to effectively fulfill their mandate. I would also like to indicate that the very building that we're being attacked about, the 3 Alexandra, was, as I indicated earlier, something that the Property and Real Estate Division was pursuing even during the tenure in housing where it was at the time of Dr. Rudal Munilal. A request was made and interest was shown by letter. That letter was copied to Mr. Munilal. So to pretend now that it is a PNM thing and that we are abusing our position, it really is a ridiculous stance to adopt.
So we do have a couple of questions coming in, and I will begin with our first question Hi, good day. You may proceed with your question. Please identify yourself.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Sunil Lala from TTT News. Minister Ilbert, you mentioned that NCB Global has been successful in, I think, 3.7% of the cases. Can you give us an amount, how much these contracts amount to? And secondly, I'm not sure if I missed it because my internet is lagging a bit, but could you say how many times Mr. Young actually recused himself?
Well, I don't have the information on how many times he recused himself. I am dealing with the allegations made by the leader of the opposition. And what the leader of the opposition has said is that Minister Young recused himself 57 times. So that is the allegation I'm dealing with. Whether he recused himself 57 or 157 times, I can't say. What I can say is that every single time we submitted a note to Cabinet, this is the Ministry of Finance, with respect to getting Cabinet approval to award a mandate to a bank, and I want to read them out again: Answer Merchant Bank, Citibank, FCB, First Caribbean, Royal Bank, Republic Bank, Royal Merchant Bank, Scotia Bank, that sort of thing. Every time the Ministry of Finance approached Cabinet with respect to awarding a mandate to a particular bank with respect to arranging a particular loan for a state enterprise or for the government directly, and NCB had tendered, whether they were successful or not, Minister Young recused himself. So I would think over the period 2015 to 2020, that would be a considerable amount of times. But within that matrix, NCB was only successful out of $70 billion in all. NCB was only successful with respect to 2.6 billion, which is 3.7%. So the grand total of financing, which includes refinancing of government debt, payment of principal, sinking fund contributions, etc., and budgetary support and state enterprise debt, $70.8 billion. And out of that, NCB was successful to the tune of 2.6 billion, which is 3.7%. As to how many times Minister Young recused himself, I don't know. And I've just had confirmation that Mr. Richard Young has denied absolutely the scandalous allegation that he acted as a broker or commission agent for NCB, and he has told me definitively that he has not had anything to do with this, and he has received no money from NCB for any purpose whatsoever with respect to government financing. I just want to put that on the record. I just asked him flat out. I know that we have had no contact with him, that he doesn't come here, he doesn't get involved, we have no communication with him whatsoever. I just asked him to tell me whether he had in fact acted as a broker commission agent for NCB, and he said absolutely not, and has received no money from them. So this allegation from the leader of the opposition that Minister Young's father was a commission agent or a broker for NCB Global Finance and got millions of dollars is an outright lie.
Thank you, Minister. We will move on to our next question. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning. Please identify yourself and proceed with your question.
Good afternoon, hostess. My name is Anthony Wilson at the Trinidad Express. I have 5 questions for the Minister of Finance.
All right, Anthony, can you hear me, Anthony?
Yes, I can.
This press conference is about 2 things. One is NCB, let me finish, Anthony, if you don't mind. One is NCB, Global Finance and allegations related to Angus Young, Richard Young, and Stuart Young, and the other is rental of government buildings. Any of your 5 questions relate to those matters?
All of them.
Oh, great.
The first question is, this issue was raised, the issue of the alleged involvement of the Young family in the government was raised during the election campaign, which the UNC lost.
Yes.
Why do you think it's being raised again?
I think it must be the internal elections in the UNC. I guess the leader of the opposition is looking for relevance. I don't know. Maybe the UNC is hurting still from that defeat, that back-to-back defeat, and maybe they want to try and say that the PNM is as bad as the UNC. You know, misery loves company, eh? So maybe they want to join us in their bacchanal, but we are not like them. So I just want to make that point. We are not like them. I don't know why.
if there are issues about the transparency of the government raising financing, why doesn't the Ministry of Finance publish the RFPs and the results of the loan mandates so that everybody could see what was requested and the outcome of that request?
I would have to get advice on that. That might fall into the realm of confidential banking information. You know, with banks, there's a particular regime in terms of confidentiality, so I would seek advice on that. I can state categorically that when we look at every single one of them, based on these factors that I have outlined here, effective interest rate, fee structure, total cost, internal rate of return, and net present value, that is what determines who wins. Whether I could publish all the bids, because some of these may be trade secrets as well. You know, the banks may not want people to know what they're bidding, but I'll seek advice on that.
Why was the WASA bond maybe in May or June cancelled?
As NCB.
That is one that...
Anthony, is that NCB?
Yes, definitely. That is a loan mandate that the technocrats of the Ministry of Finance determined should have gone to NCB Global Finance.
You know more than me. I was not aware that you were familiar with the internal workings of the technocrats at the Ministry of Finance.
No,
I'm not aware of any cancellation. What exactly are you talking about?
Sorry, the leader of the opposition during the election campaign raised the specific issue of the WASA loan during one of her meetings.
So your source is the leader of the opposition?
No, the source is a cabinet note read out by the leader of the opposition.
I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. I can't comment. I'll have to investigate that. I would not accept anything the leader of the opposition says.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have a schedule of the government's proposed bond issues, loan financings for the 2021 fiscal year?
But that's not NCB either,
Transparency.
Anthony, that's not NCB either, Let's just stick within the narrow confines of this press conference, please, if you don't mind. I can provide that information at a future press conference, and I can assure you there will be one. And now that you've told me that, I can tell you we have stated very plainly that we expect a budget deficit in 2021 fiscal of $8.2 billion, which means we have to raise $2 billion every quarter, more or less. So we do have a plan, but I did not walk with that this morning. That is not an NCB matter. NCB would only be associated with that if they are successful in any of those financings that we'll be raising over the next 11 months or so. There will be a press conference, so I can assure you of that. And now that you've warned me that this is what you want to know, at that press conference, I will work with that information in the near future.
Okay.
Is that it for you, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm good for now, thanks.
You
Do
ministers?
encourage him.
He doesn't.
We have no questions from
That's
any
it?
members of the media this time,
Well,
so
great.
we can wrap.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for
Okay.
joining with us.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Just tell me when we're off.
We're off.
All right.
Great.
You see, they don't want to harass you at all.
I'm very happy about that.
You're not a threat.
Of course, that doesn't mean they will not stop talking. They will stop talking the foolishness.
No. Yeah, but they ain't gonna harass you because you're not a threat. So, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, thanks. Thank
You're
everybody.
welcome,
Very well.
What was it to tell you? You were good, your voice was very powerful that night.
Uh-huh.
Like your home practicing.